started knitting and now you have a bunch of knitted squares. So what are you going to do with these squares? Let me show you a couple of things. My name is Linda and welcome to Waldorf Wonder Things. First of all, let's make up the butterfly. What we have is our knitted square, some scissors. I have already threaded a needle with the same colour yarn that I've used, and I have a pipe cleaner or chenille stick. Now, what I need to do is find the centre line. The easiest way to do that is to fold it in half, pinch it along the edge here, and just take your needle and bring it in the side here, straight up from the top. Now you can open that because we know where the centre is now. Now I'm just going to create a running stitch right along where my centre line is. I can see where that is. I'm going to run on my stitches through here. I'm using quite large stitches and I'm not pulling them tight just yet. Okay, when I get to the end, I'm just going to give it a little pull from both sides, just very gently pulling it together. Not too much, just gently. Now what I'm going to do is tie both ends. So I think I'll start by knotting here. Okay, created that knot there. I'm just going to weave in my ends, just like we did when we finished our project. We're just weaving the ends in to hide the end of it. So just tying my knot here. And I've pulled the threads off my needle, so I'll just reattach those quickly. Now I'm going to weave in these ends here. Now with my chenille stick, I'm going to fold this in half, just like this, and then I'm going to put my butterfly on the inside of this, and I'm going to just gently push it down a little so I get it into the spot that I would like it, maybe there. Now I'm going to just twist that in the spot to hold it all together. You can curl your little antenna. And there we have the butterfly. So the next little project we're going to make up is the fish. What I have is my knitted square, scissors, thick needle, and it's already thread with the same colour yarn that I've used. I also have some stuffing. I've used wool roving for this. So with our little fish, I want the stitching to go along the sides of the fish. So I'm quite mindful of that. So if we look at this, I'm going to stitch this side here. So I'm going to start from the bottom, and I'm just going to pick up a couple of stitches in a running form along the edge. So this is the side of the knitting. It's not the top of the bottom. So you can see that my stitches are quite large. I'm just going in and out. Now I'm just going to pull both so it comes together. Now you want to knot that together. Pull it tight. I just want you to know that this is the inside of the fish. I do a double knot so that stays nice and tight. Now we're just going to come and stitch both sides together. So I'm just going under the top of the stitch from this side and under the top of the stitch on the other side. So I like to keep this together so I can see that one side doesn't end up longer than the other. So I'm going to just pull this side a little longer because it's not quite lining up for me. Okay, let's continue. Now I'm working, as I've got both of my sides together, I'm just going through, this is one side and this is the opposite side. I'm just going through both together now, from top to bottom. Okay, now that is done, I want you to tie off your yarn here. So do a double knot. Now since this is the inside of our work, we don't need to be too particular about the ends. So I'm just going to cut it just so it's not so long that I don't need to do anything. I don't need to weave it in, it's going to be the inside. So now we're just going to turn our project in the other way. Okay, now take a little bit of your wool roving and stuff that into the middle so we want it to be mostly full, maybe 3/4 full. Okay, when you've got that shape, we are going to, with our needle and thread still inside, just run it along the inside. I don't want to cut the yarn only to have to retie it again in a moment, so I'm using a small running stitch to bring the yarn to about 1/3 of the way down. While this is inside, we're going to create a running stitch around this section here, the section that hasn't been stuffed. So again, we're just going in and out, nice big stitches. Okay. When you get back to the beginning, I want you to poke your finger to keep your stuffing from coming out as you pull the string. So you can feel that it's not going to come out. Keep pulling until you can get your finger out without the stuffing following you. Okay, I'm just doing a couple of little stitches to secure my thread here. So after I've secured the thread with a couple of stitches here, I'm going to bring my needle so it comes through the middle. Sorry, it goes through the tail and comes out the middle section here. So just from the side, you can see there's the middle of the tail inside there. That's how we're going to bring it through. Now that we have this in here, I want you to hold your fish on the side. You can tell the bottom because this is where the seam is. Point the seam down, hold your fish to the side and squeeze his tail together. Now make sure all of the ends line up, and I want you to find the middle section. So we're going to take our needle out of the middle and we're going to secure the tail with a couple of little stitches right in the middle of the edge. Now what we're going to do is put our needle back just beside those stitches, back through the middle of the tail and just out beside where we did our running stitch again. Doesn't look particularly good.
I'm just moving my yarn over a little bit. I want it right in the middle of the tail on the side of the fish.
Pull it tight so that brings the middle part of the tail down and close to the body. Now we're going to take our yarn and wrap it over the top and then just secure on the other side with a couple of stitches again. So our tail should now look a little like this. When you're happy with your tail, I want you to tie off your yarn and create an invisible knot by burying the string or the ends of it inside. If you get to this point and you don't have enough length in your string to go back through backwards like this. Just make sure you hold on to your knot here. It's a little bit tricky. So I lost my knot. I'm just going to bring my needle underneath the knot.
That's going to create my double knot.
And now I'm just going to sink the thread through the fish and cut the thread. And now we have finished our little fish. Okay, so now let's make our bunny. I have my knitted square, a needle threaded with the same coloured yarn as my knitted square, scissors. I also have a small amount of white yarn. This is to create a pom-pom tail, which is what my fork is for. I also have some wool roving, that's for stuffing the bunny. So our bunny is created using running stitch to begin with. I just want to show you what we're going to do and then we'll get on with it. To begin with, we're going to stitch along the middle of the square, a running stitch. I don't want you to tie it when you get to the end, but then we're going to come up in a triangular shape to the center of the top. And then once you get there, don't tie it again, come back to the beginning. Again, don't tie it. So once we've done that, I'll tell you what to do. If you want to find the exact middle, fold it in half, squeeze the ends together, bring your needle from the center and poke it through the top. That should be your middle. Where's the middle? I think it's this little ridge here. I'm going to follow that along with a running stitch. So remember, running stitches are just in and out. Don't pull tight. Large stitches. Okay, keep following that little ridge to the other end. Once you are there, remember we're going to go to the center at the top. Keep that in mind. You may want to put a little pin there so you know where you're heading, but I'm just going to keep my thumb there so I know where I need to go. So again, we're doing a running stitch, which is just large stitching. Don't pull it tight yet. Okay, now I am at the center at the top. And I'm going to come back down in that triangular shape back to the beginning. all I'm going to do is pull it tight. So pull the bottom one first, and then you want to pull the top. Just pull it gently. We've created a little pocket in here. So now we're going to take some of our wool roving, just a small amount. Create a little ball with it and poke that into the little hole that you've just created. Now, make sure none of the stuffing is coming out. Pull both strings closed. You want to tie a knot with both of them. Pull them tight and create a double knot. Pull it tight as you can. Don't break your string, or you'll have to do it all again. Okay, now what you've created is your little bunny face with your bunny ears. So we're just going to sew the back now. So find where your working yarn is and the tail pieces. So the tail pieces, we're just going to cut them. Leave a little bit in there. They're just going to poke inside the bunny now. So I'm going to be working a ladder stitch to close the top of the bunny here. So I'm from the top. I'll grab a couple and then along the bottom. I like to do a ladder stitch because that keeps the seam on the inside. Try not to put your ears in there. So my ladder stitch, you go in from the top, catch a couple of little stitches there and come out again at the top. And do that on the bottom as well. You go in from the top, catch a couple of stitches and come out again at the top. So do that all the way to the bottom. Now this is where we're going to take some more wool roving and stuff our little bunny on the inside. So you might not need that much. This becomes the little bunny's body. I'm going to stuff that on the inside. You want him quite firm. Now we're going to do a running stitch along the bottom here, and that's going to bring the edges closed. Don't worry too much if your stitches are on the outside or the inside this time. Remember, running stitches are just long stitches. Now when you are at the last stitch, now I'm just going to make sure my stuffing is on the inside as I pull this tight. So once I'm confident that the stuffing's not going to come out, I take my finger out and pull tight. Oopsie. And pull tight. Now you want to secure that with a couple of stitches. And when you've done that, tie a knot and then create some invisible knots by putting your needle back inside the bunny and bringing it out in a different section. When we've done that, cut your thread just where it came out of the bunny. Okay, give it a little squish. Now, I'll show you how to make these little pom-pom tail. He's our bunny at the moment, so let's make his little pom-pom tail. The first thing I'm going to do is make sure I have a little length of yarn cut off like this. I'm going to take my fork and just hold and wrap. Okay, I think that should be okay. Just a couple more. All right. Now I'm just going to hold that. I've cut my yarn. I'm just holding it here. Now the little bit of yarn that I've got, I'm going to thread back onto my needle. This just makes it easier. So I'm going to create a knot. We're going through the middle. And coming out from the bottom here. Now don't let the end come through. We're going to tie this off. As tightly as we can. Now take your scissors. I know this is going to seem a bit scary, but we're going to cut the threads on the other side. Just start with the top layer first to make sure you're not cutting through the bottom. Now we have a little pom-pom. So you can go ahead and give him a bit of a trim. So the two threads that you used to tie your knot, you're going to use those to sew this onto your bunny. Thread your needle with the ends of your knot. Now the part of your bunny that we gathered, that's where we're going to stitch our little pom-pom tail to. So I'm just going to connect here, come under where I know my stitching is. Sorry, where my knot was. So I've just got to this point. I've just put my thread through the bunny. Now I'm going to take my needle. Now I've just tied my knot in the bunny here. I'm going to take my needle again, thread it through the bunny and come out somewhere else. Pull it tight and then make sure the threads come through. And you want to just snip it, pull tight, just snip it close to the fabric there. Now you may want to trim your bunny's tail. So there we have a little bunny. To make the little mouse, we have our knitted square, a needle with matching yarn, my little scissors. I have some scrap pieces of yellow wool felt. This is yellow so it can match. You can pick a different color if you'd like. These are to make the ears. I have needle and thread. The thread is also yellow to match. I have scissors to cut out my ears and some wool roving to stuff the mouse. Now we're going to start at the back of the mouse. So let's start with a running stitch. So remember, running stitch again is long stitches. Don't pull it tight just yet. Oh, don't do that. You don't want that in there. Okay, now pull tight and tie off with a knot. And that's going to be the back of the mouse. Now I'm going to ladder stitch the sides here. So remember, ladder stitch is going in from the top, collecting a little bit of the knitted fabric parallel to the seam that you're creating, and then going out from the top again. In from the top, out from the top. In from the top, out from the top. I like to do that stitch because it hides the seam on the inside. One thing I forgot to mention is we're going to need to make a twisty string. Now, children in Waldorf kindergartens learn to do this, and it's very, very easy. So for that part, we're going to need some more wool. If you would like the same color tail as this, then use your yellow, but of course you can use a different color. I've got my seam on the inside, I've got my mouse's body. Now I need to stuff my mouse. So if you think of the shape of a mouse, he's generally bigger at the back. So we're going to take our large ball of stuffing and using your thumb, push it right to the back. Keep putting your stuffing in till it's all full. Now what we're going to do is pull that tight, and we're going to create another running stitch around the open end. This is going to be the little mouse's face, or maybe not face, but nose. Put your finger in so none of the stuffing comes out and pull tight. So you secure that with a couple of stitches or a stitch before you create a knot. Now that you've double knotted it, put your needle back inside and have it come out the body and cut. Smooth it out. Now you might want to give your mouse a little bit of shaping, just squeeze the front of it and push up the back. Now we're going to make his twisty tail. To make our little mouse's tail, we're going to create a twisty yarn. Now to do that, it's quite easy and quite fun. So we need 3 pieces of yarn. Mine are about 23 inches or 60 centimeters. You're also going to need another pair of hands. So first what we do is we tie a knot with all 3 pieces of yarn together. Then have your helper hold the end of it taut while you begin to twist. Now we're going to twist this continuously until we get to a point where we can't twist it anymore. Now you might begin to see your string kinking up like this. Now that's a good sign. So now take the other end and put the ends together. Don't let go because it will all unravel. So your tail may look like this at the moment. So we're just going to stretch it out so that we don't have any bumps. Just stretch it out so it's nice and smooth. Here I've got a little bump, so to fix that I'm just going to put my finger in the middle and stretch it out, and now that looks a bit better. So still without letting go, I'm going to tie a knot around where the first knot was. And now we have our little mouse's tail. Use these pieces to actually tie it on. So this might be a little tricky, especially if they're quite short. So I'm just trying to put a knot through both sections. So if your threads are a little too short for you to put on the needle and then put the needle into the mouse, put the needle in first. Hold it here, and then you want to thread your needle here. it's a little bit tricky, then you can pull that through. Just give it a trim here. So I'm just putting these on the inside of the mouse. Now I'm not cutting them just yet because I want to put them all through, because each time that I thread that one, I tend to pull these back through. Now I've got all the threads through, I'm just going to pull them a little bit so they're nice and tight, and that will help it sink back into the fabric. Now, to really make sure that that tail is secure, take a longer piece of yarn to finish stitching it on. So first create a knot just where your tail is going to be. Make that a double knot so it's nice and secure. Now you're going to take the rest of that knot from that tail and stitch it nice and securely into position. Because we don't want his tail coming off. Tie a double knot, and then we'll do the same thing as we did with the strands before. Work the thread through the body, give it a little pull, and cut it close to the fabric there. And the other end into the fabric, out somewhere else. Snip. Okay, remember I said to give your mouse a little bit more shaping, so you can do that now. Give him a little push and a squeeze at the front. He's got his tail. Now let's make these ears. So I've got my thread and I've got my scrap fabric. So I want them to be about the same. I'm taking the larger piece and putting it below the smaller piece. I'm just going to create a rough ear shape. You can create a little paper template to do this if you like, but you don't need to. Just gently cut a nice little ear shape. When you have two of them, we're going to take our needle and thread and stitch them in place. So again, we secure our thread with a double knot. Leave enough room so that we can create some invisible knots again. So starting on this end, we're going to work along in a ladder stitch. So again, the ladder stitch works horizontal or parallel to the end that you're working with. So you might find that your ears are sticking forward a little bit. Just come from the back and stitch along the back as well. Again, we're working in ladder stitch. Just keep your other end of the threads out of the way. Now when you're happy with your placement, make a knot. Don't cut your threads though, because instead of cutting it, we're going to send it through the mouse to the other side where you're going to start stitching your ears on this side. So again, we're just going to do some ladder stitch. Continue stitching along the back. When you're finished along the back, you want to create a knot, a double knot. And put that thread back through the body, pull it tight, and snip it close to the body again. Now we're going to do the same thing with the other thread that was from the beginning of when we started stitching the ears. So you want to put the threads back onto the needle, and again, just going to put it back through into the mouse. Bring the threads through and cut close to the body. Great, give your mouse a little nose shaping, little bum smushing, little ear flattening, and there you go, you have your little mouse. To knit our little cat, we have our knitted square, little scissors, I have some scrap yarn, and I have a needle and thread threaded with the same colour yarn as our knitted square. I also have some wool roving for stuffing. Now to begin, the first thing we're going to do is do a running stitch along the bottom. So we don't want to tie this, and we're just doing big stitches along the bottom here. In and out of these cast on stitches that I've got here. Now hold one end and pull through until it all gathers. We're going to tie a knot to hold it securely. I'm going to keep the ends on the outside because in a moment I'm going to turn this inside out. Now line this up before you stitch. We're going to stitch all along the edge here. Starting from the point that we gathered, we're just going to go in and out along these two edges, keeping them together. When you get to the cast off edge at the top, that's when we're going to tie a knot. Now we're just going to trim that. We don't need to weave the ends in because we're going to turn this in the other way. So let's do that now. Now we're going to take some of our roving. I'm going to stuff this in the bottom. Use your thumb to push it right down to the bottom. I'm going to stuff a little bit more.
We're going to stuff the body until it's filled to about 2/3 of the way up.
Now we're about to create the head by creating a neck using a different colour yarn, and this is going to create the collar, which helps to define where the body and the head is by creating a neck. So I have a different colour yarn. I'm going to start at the back where my seam is. I'm not going to tie a knot, so I'm working probably 1/3 from this end or 2/3 from the bottom. So I'm going to go in through the seam, and I've picked a little ridge here that I'm going to work my stitches around. So I'm not tying a knot, I'm just going in and out here, quite large stitches. It's another running stitch. Okay, bring your needle back out where you began, and you're going to pull them both tight and tie a knot. I'm just going to make this end a little bit longer, so I'll pull it through. Tie a knot and make it a double knot so it doesn't come undone. Now what I'm going to do is use these strands to actually make a little bow. So I'm going to tie it over here, just gently this time, don't pull tight. And then just tie a bow. Then we're going to trim our ends. There's our little bow ready. If you didn't want the bow, you could always just use the same color yarn as your cat, and then when you tied your knot here, create some invisible knots by putting them inside the cat. So the bow is optional. Let's change the color of our yarn again back to the same color as the cat. So mine is blue. I'm going to thread that on. So first we're going to take a little bit of stuffing, roll it into a little ball and put it in the cat's head. Now he has a head. I'm going to pinch this seam together. The seam at the back should be in the middle here. So I'm going to start over here. I'm going to stitch these together. Now I'm leaving a little space, a little length in these ends so that I can sink them into the cat in a moment. I am tying this, it's not a running stitch. Double knot. Actually, what I might do with these, I'm going to cut them and just poke them on the inside. And then I'm going to stitch them in. Okay, so remember when I'm pinching the head together, the seam at the back is in the middle. So you're taking your needle from the front straight through to the back. And then again from the back, straight through to the front. Give it a bit of a pull to make sure all of the thread comes through and you're not ending up with a little bubble at the back or the front. So keep stitching all the way across. You may need to adjust how you're holding it to make sure they're both in line, the front and the back. Okay, now we tie a knot on this side. We're going to put our needle through the cap. It doesn't really matter where he comes out. I might do it from the back. So don't pull that through too tight because you don't want the ears to bend down. Now snip that off. And that'll just give your ear a bit of a tug and the thread and the end should end up inside the cat. So now just give your head a little push and that will help the ears to poke up. To make the cat's tail, take 3 strands of yarn. Mine are about 23 inches long, that's about 60 centimeters. Have your 3 pieces of yarn and you're going to tie a knot all together in one end. You're going to need a helper with this one. So have your helper hold one end like this and then they're just going to drag that to the other side. They're just going to take that. So your helper will hold your yarn taut so that you can twist. We're going to keep twisting until you feel you can't twist it anymore. So I'm still twisting. Okay, that's probably about as twisted as this can get. Now I'm going to take both ends and put them together. You can see it's already started to kink here. Now I need to smooth this out, so I'm just going to pull it gently and slide my fingers along to the end. And that should make one smooth tail. Now tie both ends together. Be careful not to let it go in case it unravels. So tie it together so your knots are in the same position. And now we're going to sew this to our cat. So I'm going to take the longest of the threads on the end of the knot, and I want the tail to come not from the bottom but from the back on the side, because that will help him sit up if he doesn't have to sit on a knot. So pull the end through, and I'm going to secure that by stitching back into this knot here. And a couple of stitches. So here at the bottom, I'm just going to put a knot here now. Make sure it's tight. Now let's just thread this end back through the cat so we don't see that end of the yarn. So there's one. Just give that a quick snip. Now let's find another long end. Thread that one back on. So I'm just going to come under here because I can see there's a bit of a weird knot. Now I'm going to stitch through our knot again so we secures nicely to our cat. Let's turn that into a knot. And hide our ends. This one looks like a good one as well. Let's use this one. So first I want to go into the cat. Oh, sorry. Yes, into the cat. And into the knot. And then do a knot in the cat. If your ends here are too short to do what I'm doing, you could always just put all of the ends into the cat and then thread your needle with some new yarn and stitch the knot on. Or it might be easier to stitch the knot first and then put all of the ends into the cat. Okay, my cat's tail is nice and secure, so I've still got these parts. All I'm going to do with this is thread them onto my needle and put them into the cat and bring them out, pull it tight and give it a little snip. Pull it tight, give it a snip. Okay, there's our little cat finished. I'm just going to push him onto the table to help him stand up. Okay, so there's our little cat all finished. And he even stands up. To make our octopus, we have our knitted square and needle threaded with the same coloured yarn as our square. Scissors. I have yarn in 3 different colours here. You can use all one colour or 3 different, it doesn't matter. And I have some wool ready for stuffing. Now to begin, we're going to create the head of the octopus. So I want the stitches running down. So to do that, I'm going to stitch along the side and that's going to be the top of the head. So we're going to do a running stitch along here. So that means we don't tie a knot. So I'm just catching a couple of these stitches along the edges here. I'm not pulling my yarn very tight. You can see very quickly that I've just done a quick running stitch along the edge here. Now you're going to pull them both together so that all of this comes together like this. Now tie your knot. You're going to make that a double knot. So this is going to be the inside. I'm just going to keep my ends on the outside of this here. Now we're going to sew down this edge here. So just catch both sides. You're going to line them up so that they both finish together. Now keep them squeezed together, and you're just going to go in from one side, out on the other. Just the top stitch on both edges. Now we're at the bottom, we're going to tie a knot. Create a loop, put your needle through, hold onto the new loop, and give things a wiggle to tighten the knot, and back through the loop again. That creates a knot. Now I don't need to do anything with these, I'm just going to make it a little shorter, about there. Now let's turn this in the right way so we keep our seams on the inside. Now we should have a little tube shape. Now for our octopus head, we're going to take our wool roving, just ball it up a little to help you get it inside. Use your thumb to push it all the way to the top. Now it should be 2/3 of the way. We've got 2/3. Now we're going to use our thread that's already attached, so we don't need to attach it again. But I am going to bring it up to this point where our stuffing ends. So we're just like we did with a running stitch, just going to bring the needle through and in and out a little bit, just to get our yarn to the position where I want it, which is just where the stuffing starts. So when I do this, I'm going to create a running stitch around here. Try to keep the same distance all the way around. So remember, what running stitch is just in and out, quite large stitches. On the inside, try to push your stuffing down towards the top so that it doesn't get caught in this wool that's going around. You can find where the start is because you remember where that seam is, that's where we started. Now pull that tight, and that should bring all together. Now what we're going to do is tie a knot. I'm going to tie a knot here. And I want to create some invisible knots. I'm going to take my needle, insert it back into the head of the octopus and pull it through. Cut that off now. Now let's go ahead and make some legs. To make the legs for your octopus, you're going to need two things. You need yarn. I have different colors. You may use all different colors or all the same color. It doesn't matter. And the other thing you'll need is an extra pair of hands or a helper. First thing is to tie a knot in the end of the yarns, and then have your helper hold that taut, and you're going to keep twisting the yarn until you feel you can't twist it anymore. So don't let go of this, otherwise all your twisting will come undone. When you feel it's twisted enough, take both ends and put them together. Still don't let go. Now yours may end up all kinked like mine. So to smooth this out, I'm just going to run my fingers from the top to the bottom. I might need to unwind some of the kinks, especially if they end up like this. So I'm just going to put my finger in the middle, give it a little shake, and make sure it's all smooth. Now when that's done, tie a knot. You want it in about the same position as the original knot, maybe slightly lower. And there we have one octopus leg. Now you need to go and make 7 more. Now that I have all 8 legs for my octopus, I'm going to show you how to attach them. Because my legs are 3 different colors, one of them is the purple that I use for the octopus. So I'm going to take those 2 strands of yarn, and I'm going to use those 2 to attach to the octopus. The others I'm going to make go inside the octopus so I can't see the ends of those. So where my bottom of the octopus is, I'm going to open that section up, and around here, that's where I'm going to attach it. I don't want to push this down and sew it, because then we'll end up sewing this part of the octopus to here. So I have to be careful, and I do just want to sew it very close to this opening here, but not so much as I'm going to sew through to the other side. So I'm going to catch a couple of little strands here and bring the knot into position. Now I'm going to put some stitches through that knot and then back into the bottom of the octopus, and I'll tie a knot here. Okay, I've created a double knot. Now that that's knotted, I can take my other purple strand. I'm going to do the same thing. First attach to the octopus, go back through the knot, and then tie another knot attaching it to the octopus again. Into the octopus. It's a bit tricky because all these other bits are all in the way. Through the knot of the leg. Now you're going to put this back into the octopus. Now this is where I'm going to create my knot. Now that I've attached that leg with 2 knots, I'm going to take all of the ends and put them through the little gap in the middle here. I'll show you, into this section. Going to put them all up into the middle of the octopus and bring them out on the sides. So we're going to do that for every end here. Back into the middle. Snip that off. You might want to do 2 at a time, that might be a little easier. Now if you've got a particularly short one like this, an easy way to fix this, or to be able to thread it, is to put your needle in first and just hold it next to it. Then you can thread, and then that will bring it through. So our octopus leg is attached on the inside under here. Now we're going to go ahead and attach the rest of the legs in the same way. I wanted to show you, if you've got legs and they've only got tiny little ends that you won't be able to tie knots with, I'll show you how to attach those. So you're going to take your needle and your thread again, threaded with the same colour yarn as your octopus. So in this way, we're just going to knot our yarn onto the section where we want it. Leave these nice and long so that you can thread those into the octopus when we're done. Tie your double knot. We're just going to put our leg next to the knot that we created, and let's put our needle through that knot, pull it close. A stitch through the octopus, pull that nice and close again. Now find where your knot has gone, stitch into the knot another time. Pull that tight and back into the octopus. That will be enough to hold your leg in position. It's a little tricky when you have multiple legs here. So tie that there. Make sure your legs and your ends don't get all tangled. Now that we already have these longer strands, we can use those to tie the knot here. Make it a double knot, and then we're going to thread all of our ends back into the octopus, just as we did for the other leg. Now that your octopus has all his legs on, he is finished. If you would like, you could also add some eyes here, but I think he's quite sweet just like this.
Thank you for watching, and if you found this video helpful, show your support by giving it a like. And if you'd like to stay updated with all of my new tutorials, please subscribe.